following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Up Tempo Podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Smith, joined as always by my guy, Blake Lane. And he's back again, ladies and gentlemen, Ike Jones from the War Rapport. Ike, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Hey, man, I am good. Glad to be back in here with you guys.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you. Blake, how are you, brother?
In there, man. Glad to be here, ready to ask Ike all types of questions, man, all across the Auburn athletics.
Yeah, Ike, we just finished up doing our baseball review for the regional. Tough one, man. Tough one for the Tigers. 2 and barbecue, as they say. I know you guys kind of let off your show yesterday just talking about it. Your overall thoughts on the baseball season, though, man?
Listen, it ended a lot better than what we anticipated the ending was going to be from the start of the season by just making the postseason, right? Like making the SEC tournament did not look like that was guaranteed, halfway through the season. Being able to host a regional didn't look like it was if you ask, I challenge you to find someone who would have said, 15 games into this baseball season, Auburn's making a region or hosting a regional. To show me where that person made that prediction, right? And so to get to the place of hosting it, I feel like that team did a lot of good things to get to that position. But, the holes that were existent in the game that Auburn Baseball had just showed themselves in the regional, right? And you can't have the defense be as much of a liability as it had been and expect to go really far as a team, and then your bats don't show up too, right? Like it's just they didn't have a prayer in that first game against Penn. That pitcher was absolutely, he was dealing. The second game, though, I feel like they had their opportunities. They were just pressing a little too much, right? And I think the moment was really big, and at no point in time did they get resettled and understand what kind of got them there, which was being patient and these are my pitches to hit, and I'm going to take advantage of those pitches. But some young guys stepped up in some big moments. Ike Irish is real. Like if anybody thought that this was just like, oh, he's, flash in the pan, it was consistent all season, man. The kid can hit. Chris Stanfield had a little bit of a slump for a portion towards the end of the year, but though he didn't have a lot of hits in the regional, he had some good at bats, right? Like, and he almost hit a freaking grand slam, right? Like he gets a little bit more pop in his bat, man. He's going to be dangerous because if he's going to get on base consistently, forget about it, right? Like he can change momentum of games just because he's dangerous on the base pad. But man, if he gets a little more pop in that bat, bro, like that's going to be a scary kid because he's got all the tools. But all that to say, Auburn baseball, good season, not great, but hopefully they'll be able to bounce back for next year.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we got the new stadium upgrades and all that starting pretty soon, so I'll be fired up for that, man. And I think that overall we're in a good place. It's disappointing because, like me and Blake just talked about, Butch said it himself. The expectation is to win games in Omaha now. As he said it last year, it's not even just to get there. So when you get to host your own regional and don't even make it out, it's kind of hard to say that that's not disappointing. But
to win nothing, right? Like it's one thing to not get out of the regional. It's a whole other thing to win no games in it. Like it's a little not a little disappointing. It's very disappointing as a fan, and I'm sure that those young men in that locker room feel the same way, that they're super disappointed in how that ended. So.
Yeah, it sucks, but the future's bright. So getting on here to we want to get a little basketball. We've just kind of, like I told you off air, on this podcast, we've been focused on the baseball. We've kind of held off on the basketball because we wanted to see how it all fell. And I got to say, dude, like to me, with the transfer portal now, this was just, there were so many guys that you were hearing, okay, the kid that ended up going back to Vanderbilt comes to mind. You think that this kid's coming in, and then this guy, and you, Johni ended up making it pretty interesting, going to the draft and showing out, and did a lot better than we thought he would do. And really, I feel like he kind of got a pay raise if I had to guess. Don't have any inside knowledge there, but definitely something like that would probably happen. But now that it's all settled, man, kind of where your overall thoughts on where that roster stands, and maybe some strengths and weaknesses. And do you feel like we got better overall?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll answer the last question first. Did we get better overall? I think the answer to that is yes. Overall better. Where I think that we have yet, strengths and weaknesses wise to really understand how well they're going to do. And listen, Coach Pearl and company have a big task in front of them to figure out what these rotations look like with these young men because um the weaknesses for me for this team are pretty apparent on paper, and that is being able to defend the rim and being able to rebound. I don't know that there are any clear cut avenues to say we can dominate defensively inside, whether that is rebounding or blocking shots, affecting shots, something like that. As
Mhm.
good on paper when you see like stats as Janai Broom might be in block shots, he's not, and nobody's Walker Kessler, but just to give
Mhm.
you kind of a comparison, he's not Walker Kessler in the fact that he's going to block a bunch of shots, but he's going to affect that much more. He's not that guy in there defensively as of right now, and how he
Mhm.
rotates off the ball and being able
Mhm.
to really make people think twice about it. So we're going to have to figure that out. Dylan Cardwell's going to have to figure out how to get more minutes, or they're going to have to, the coaching staff's going to figure out how to put him in the game more because he is a little bit more of a rim protector, enforcer on the inside in that way. Um, I didn't see a lot of that in Chaney Johnson's tape from the stuff that I have from him. Um, you're not going to get that from Chad Baker Mazara, right? He's not really a shot blocker, rim protector, right? So they're going to have to figure that portion out. And I think that that's going to be an
Mhm.
obvious weakness and why I say, though, we did get better is that the basketball in this era is really about being able to put the ball in the hoop, right? Like it's not the lockdown defensive teams. If being able to be a lockdown defensive team was the end all be all, Tennessee would have gone further, right? You got to be able to score.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this team can score better than last year's team can on paper, right? Denver Jones, and why I say better on paper, because you still have to figure out how they're going to play together. But Denver Jones is a shot creator, shot maker, right? Like he can go put the ball in his hand. Everybody get out of my way. Let me go get a bucket. You didn't have but two guys really on last year's team, two and a half, right?
Mhm.
But Wendell he could do that, right?
Yep.
KD could do that. And then Flanagan every now and then could do that. But that's pretty much all you had. Janai Broom worked well in the post, but you're not just going to give him the ball at the end of the shot clock and say, go get me a bucket. That's just not his game.
Mhm.
So you had really two and a half late shot clock shot creators. Next year, you're going to have like five of them, right? Like you can give the ball to Aiden Holloway and say, go get me a bucket. You still got KD on this team. You're going to have Chad Baker Mazara who can go do that. You're going to have Denver Jones who can go and do that, right? So you're going to have multiple guys who you can say, put the ball in his hands, clear out, go get me a bucket, and feel pretty good about what the result is going to be on the back end of that. And I think we're just really kind of getting to the cusp of what Trey Donaldson could be for this team. So, yeah, offensively should be able to score more proficiently from the outside, should have more guys who can create their own shots. You have balance in being able to score on the inside with Janai Broom coming back. Um, if they struggle offensively, it's going to be because they didn't figure out the rotations and how to keep the right mix of guys on the floor together. So the first couple of weeks of the season may be a little rough until they figure out what that's supposed to look like and who are our best combination of five and who can I play this point guard with, this off guard with this post player, and all that kind of stuff. You still got Jalen Williams coming back. I didn't even mention him, right? So again, there's a lot of guys who can go out there and generate buckets for you. So hopefully they'll be able to figure that out.
Well, Ike, man, let me ask you this.
That's my
You know,
concern is like foul trouble. If Janai gets in foul trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If he gets in foul trouble, there's a problem.
Ike, let me ask you this, man, real quick.
Man.
The steam around Johni and him possibly going into the draft, how close was that decision? Because it really felt like right before he come back that he could possibly leave Auburn.
Yeah. I think it's 50-50, man. Like I was adamant in saying that it was closer to, I think he was leaning closer to leaving than a lot of people would have assumed, even from the very beginning. But then when he actually was able to go into those draft camps, in the G League camp and then the draft combine camp and actually play well and show well, I think it made it an even tougher decision. If he had gotten an early second round grade as opposed to a late, maybe not drafted grade, and a hey, offer of a couple of two-way contracts as opposed to, hey, we're gonna make you a end of the bench guy on our team, he would have gone, right? He had that. That was a real possibility for him because he played his way into that position. So hopefully this will pay off for him for another season for both Johni and Auburn, and we'll see what happens with that. But I find it difficult to believe that he didn't come back with the understanding that you're going to be the guy for this team and they're going to figure out how to feed him this season.
100%. So I watched watching the film that you did on Denver Jones, and I had to think about my buddy Blake over here because the main thing that stood out to me was finishing at the rim, using that size to finish at the rim. Just something, and you pointed it out. It's no shot at Wendell. We just saw it at times. You get in certain matchups where they just pound that mismatch, right? And we just can't take advantage of it. Anything else that stood out to you about his game?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Really, the biggest thing for me was his ability to finish through contact and not really even worry about the contact, right? Like it's the contact was secondary to him. Right. He focused on finishing a bucket. But the other thing is just the pace that he plays with. He doesn't feel like he gets sped up a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see late game pressure situations. I didn't get any of those from him because none of the games, it's a regular season game. It means something, but it's not the same as a tournament game. It's not the same as playing for a championship type of thing, whether or not the urgency is going to be different around him or whether he's going to have that same poise. But he did seem to have a lot of poise and just feel like not the moment didn't ever really feel big for him. He just kind of felt like, hey man, let's go hoop, let's go get a bucket. And that's the kind of guys that you want to have on your team. Moments don't dictate how they play, they rise to them. So we'll see what happens with him in that. Now a situation where athletically more guys are going to be on his level.
Ike, I think we got better at the free throw line too.
I mean,
would cross my fingers. I think we got better at the stripe, baby.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing: who did we lose, right? So let's look at that, right? Wendell was a great free throw shooter, right? So we're losing a good free throw shooter. Alan Flanagan actually pretty decent free throw shooter. Losing him,
not bad. Not a liability.
But you're replacing them with guys who can shoot better or who can shoot well from the free throw line as well. So I don't know that we necessarily got better. The question really about bad free throw shooting was, is Johni going to come back and shoot free throws better? Right. We don't know the answer to that yet. And whether or not, actually look competent at the free throw line. Cause he had multiple air balls throughout the season from the free throw line. And Trey Donaldson in heavier minutes will likely go to the line more often. Is he going to be more consistent from the free throw line? So I don't really know that we got better from the free throw line. I just think that because there are multiple guys who can shoot free throws well that will have a higher usage rate, we probably will get better incrementally from the free throw line, right? Like Alan Flanagan didn't have a high usage rate, right? He would get the ball, but he wasn't a guy you were running kind of sets through. Are they going to run some sets through Chad Baker-Mazar? Are they going to run some stuff through Denver Jones now, who's I think an 80-something% free throw shooter, right? So is your usage rate for your guys who shoot free throws well going to be higher, which will lead to a higher free throw percentage? And then, of course, Johni Broome needs to be better from the free throw line. If he gets better, then we definitely are better overall.
Yeah. So baseball's done, unfortunately, a little bit too early for every blacking. Basketball's been done. So next up is the moneymaker, dude. And we're all excited to see who frees
gymnastics
first season here on the Plains. I know Blake has some questions about the new edition. Oh, I am sorry. I'm sorry to the gymnastics. Don't come after me. I love y'all.
So I want to start this thing off with the new edition, man. The Champ Anthony kid, the JUCO DB commit. I wanted to know, what could he bring to this defense this year? Is this a work in progress? I know he still has 3 years of eligibility left. I know how deep that secondary room is, but why was the main reason that Hugh brought this kid on?
I think it's more because they needed more depth. Listen, the one thing that I will give Hugh Freeze, I will never like. He seems to be a master of understanding how to manage a roster.
Mhm.
Because he had a very keen understanding of what areas he needed depth in, and then going and figuring out how to get quality depth that fit the profile of what he wanted in each of those positions. He's done that immaculately. Um, and so I think what they're looking to do with this kid is have someone who can come in who you feel like is going to be committed to you for a couple of years, get them
Mhm.
to learn your system. He's going to be able physically to compete at this level and not have to worry about whether or not he's getting antsy in the transfer portal, right? Like you can bring him in and he sit this year and be fine with that. If he plays this year, and you need him to play, he can step in and do that. But I don't know that he's going to be we expect him to come in and play immediately guy. I think he's a guy
Mhm.
who break in case of emergency, but he is going to be the next wave of guys that we're going to have in that room. And you have an entire year of developing him in that system. So I think it's a really good get from that standpoint of having a talented person who you can bring in, but somebody who you expect to still be in your coffers next year in case some of the other people in this room decide, hey, that's not enough playing time for me this year. I'm out.
Was Keontae a big part of this and getting him in here?
I think so. I mean, Keontae Scott has already been through the whole JUCO process, transferring up to Auburn, and an understanding of kind of where the room was already and what things that they needed to be able to do to get better in the system. Listen, Keontae Scott, if anybody has ever watched War Rapport content, I don't even apologize for it. I'm a big fan of Keontae Scott. I feel like he's a super talented young man, very well-spoken young man. We just had him on the
Mhm.
program recently. He understands what they're trying to get done and get accomplished. And he's a good spokesperson for Auburn, and he definitely, I think, helped get this guy across the finish line. So, kudos to him and the other young men that were in the room there, helping to kind of sell that vision of what Coach Freeze is trying to bring to the Plains. And they've bought into that vision, and now they can communicate it properly out to others.
Well, Ike, I'll kick it over here to Dustin. I know with all the conference realignment, the rivalry games that are apparently going away and rotating and all of that, I know he's got a ton of stuff that he wants to ask you.
Yeah. Well, the thing is we don't even know how it really fell because they only said we got this 1 year. We got this 1 year stopgap, and we all know what this is. Let's not bullshit, man. This is about ESPN not having the money for that 9th game. They don't care about anything else. But I'll just give my opinion on this real quick and kick it over to Ike for his. To me, I want to keep it at 8 games for this reason right here. Because even though we got our asses drilled, playing Penn State was fun. And if you get the 9 games, I don't want to go to Happy Valley as a 10th game, playing 9 SEC games. And to everybody out there, like, I'll just call it out, big game boomer with your ridiculous tweets about the SEC schedules. My guy, look at who we play. Auburn. I was part of the Auburn fans last week bitching because I want LSU, Georgia, and Bama. I want my rivalries because here's the deal. College football is different than the NFL. It just is. And to me, what makes it different is the rivalries, because you have in Brian Harson's first year an Auburn team that is dead in the water with nothing to play for. And that crowd damn near willed us to victory just because of what it meant to the fan base. You'll never get in an NFL game what you got versus A&M last year.
Mm-hmm.
This is the emotion that college football brings. I just feel like when you say, okay, a game that we've been playing since 1892, we'll try to get it in there for you. Now, look, I get it. And I hear the other side of it where that people say, look, we're going to play them in the SEC title. We'll probably play them in a 12-team playoff. Do we have to play them 3 times to win the national championship? I understand all that. I know what happened in 2017. It wasn't fun for me either. But, dude, LSU, Florida, it doesn't matter what the record is. Remember when the cat threw the shoe? That game's crazy every year, and it's fun for us. It's fun for the fans. I don't want to see those kind of games go, Ike. I know I got on my soapbox a little bit, but I just love college ball, dude. And to me, that's what it is. Like, you can't get rid of Ole Miss versus LSU. You can't. It has to be played every year, bro.
Yeah, listen, I am all for the traditional rivalries. It gives you a little something extra to brag about. I understand the portion of the fan base that wants to, and I actually reside in that portion of the fan base that wants to play some of these other teams more routinely because it's fun to talk junk to all of the SEC fan base. That's one of the things I love about basketball, right? Like we play everybody every year.
Yeah.
So I get the opportunity to talk junk to every single SEC person, the fan base in every single SEC school. And it means something every single time, right? Because I know we're going to get to see how this plays out on the court, right? You want to see that play out on the field more often in football. But I am with you that I would rather be at 8 games than 9 because listen, the Penn State, again, we lost both times, but it was fun to be able, like, I gained some, I won't say friends, but like some really good relationships with Penn State people from us talking junk and having a back to back year rivalry with them. I got some good relationships out of that. So I enjoy it. I want to see that continue to happen. And I like to be able to talk about the SEC's dominance, and what better way to do that than actually let's go play, right? Like, let's not talk about what we've got in the trophy cases. It's like, okay, well, we could settle this on the field. Let's see what you got. Let's line it up and make it happen. So I want to see that continue to happen. But yes, I'm absolutely in favor of these classic rivalries continuing because whether we're on the right side of it or not, I don't want to be in a place where people are saying, man, I'm tired of getting beat by them. At some point in time, we need to be the other side of that where they're like, man, we got to play Auburn again, bro. Like, nah.
Right.
Like that's the place where we need to try to get our program to.
I'm old enough to remember this. I remember I had to fear the thumb t-shirt. It's not impossible. It's hard right now with Nick Saban, but my point is that you thought it was impossible with Paul Bear Bryant. Like these things change. Alabama, believe it or not, they're not going to be what they are forever. Like they're not. Georgia's probably locked in for a while. I mean, we'll be honest about that. Kirby
yeah, but Georgia was dog crap for a while too, right? So
right. Yeah, and they've beat us 15 out of 18 times. So at some point, we got to turn that around. Like you just said, it's kind of on us, but like just law of averages says that's not going to continue forever. It's gonna go one way or the other. So that's just important to remember and all that. I'm just not on that camp of like screw the rivalries altogether because then we can't stop the conference expansion. It's going to happen. But what are you going to do when you have a Big 12 that's okay and then a Big 10 and an SEC that has all the teams? It's just you can't lose the soul of college football is what I'm getting at. And I think that our rivalries are just a big part of that because do you watch an NFL game that's both teams are 4-8? I don't. I'm only going to watch my team and then a good game. But I will watch a 5-6 in Florida State and a 5-6 Florida play to see who can go to a crappy bowl game. I'll watch that.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing.
I won't watch a crappy Egg Bowl because who cares about the state of Mississippi? But I will, to your point, watch Clemson slaughter South Carolina, 10 years in a row, just because, hey, is South Carolina going to actually win this to get to a bowl? This is interesting, right?
Shane Beamer turning that thing around, though, buddy.
Yeah. South Carolina's a much better team, a program under him.
Ike, how excited are you though to actually? They're projecting like Texas on Auburn's schedule to have a Texas come to Jordan-Hare, and then possibly in 2025, Auburn going to Norman. I mean, how big is that? And how excited would you be for that?
Yeah, listen, it's the same kind of level of excitement that I had about the Penn State situation of like, oh man, this is a classic, college football program that we're getting to go head up against. That's not something that we see often. I mean, outside of a bowl game, there was very little chance that we were ever going to play Oklahoma or Texas. So the possibility of us getting that every few years now, super exciting, right? Like I want to be able to do that. Like we've just really kind of gotten Texas A&M into the conference over the last decade. I still haven't been to College Station yet. I want to go experience that, right? So I'm going to try to make that this year. But we've got to play the teams in order for this to even be a potential reality, unless I'm just going to randomly go to some other game that has nothing to do with my team, and which I don't have a ton of interest in that. I just watch it on TV. But like having a stake in that and getting to experience that at the same time, completely different. And I'm looking forward to it.
Where do you think it ends, Ike? What do you think it looks like in 25, 26?
I think that we are going to likely stay with 8. I just don't. I mean, listen, I don't need fans, and I don't think Greg Sankey really gives a crap what anybody on Twitter or
No, he does not.
Tim Brando thinks about whether or not the SEC is ducking competition. Like, I don't think he cares about that. He's like, all right, I will duck my way into more, college football playoffs and championships. And who's going to do something about it? Not you and your ridiculous rants that you want to make about things. All of these overtures that people are trying to make, beat them on the field, and then we'll have a conversation. Like we don't. I don't. Why are we even having this conversation about how you feel about what we're doing? How about you figure out how to be better at football, and then let's have a different conversation. It's much easier to do that.
It's just as an Auburn fan, it is just ridiculous to see people complaining about SEC strength of schedule. I can't speak to what Arkansas does, and I'm just not trying to hear that, because I've seen us outside of conference schedule Oregon to start a season off, schedule a quality Washington program start a season off, go to Happy Valley when we didn't have to, a very quality James Franklin ran program. Like it's ridiculous. We just don't have time for it. And like I said, to Big Game Boomer, brother, like, you're about to find out. Like, you're gonna have those draws. You're gonna have Alabama come to you, and then the next week you're gonna go to Tennessee, and then you'll get to see. And one thing that you will find out that you don't see every Saturday in the Big 12, little bit of defense. That's going to get played, and I'm interested to see how Oklahoma reacts to such a thing. I don't think Oklahoma and Texas quite. I mean, they're big time programs. I don't want to throw shade. Oklahoma is one of the most successful programs in the history of college football. I understand all that, but like, some of this talking down on the schedule, it's just like, man, you're going to hop in here and you're going to find out why that is to be. Right. And then if you say, a lot of these people are the same people that are complaining and saying, and talking about expansion, saying, well, the little guys will get left behind. Well, how do you think those little guys stay alive? It's that $2 million paycheck they come to take that ass whooping. And do you want those teams? Do you want that school to have baseball? Like, it's a trickle down effect that goes a long way. So that's an important thing to remember too. Talking about defense, though, when you kind of spoke on it, your guy Keontae Scott, I watched the interview, man. Coming into his second year, Blake hit on it. Super excited about the DB room. It's kind of, where do you think Keontae is going to fit, and how excited are you for this DB room? Like, do you think it's the strongest unit on this team?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, yes, they are the strongest unit because they're the deepest. I think if you talk about like the relative ceiling to floor variation that you have in any room, I think that they have the highest floor and already a really high ceiling, right? I think that DJ James is potentially going to be one of the best defensive backs in college football next year. And there are 2 or 3 guys that I feel like are just a notch below him in that same room. So, right, like if you're talking about potentially a room that could have 2 or 3 All-Americans on it, right? Like, I don't know that they'll actually, a lot of what dictates whether or not those guys are going to be All-Americans is how many times they actually get targeted during the game, number one. But number two, how good the football team is overall, right? Like, if you've got a really good DB room and we're like shutting people out, but still losing games because we only gave up like, 10 points, but we scored 3 in that game, right? You're still going to get your accolades. But if you're giving up, 20, 25 points, which is still a good defense, right? And most of it's on the ground and that kind of thing, but you end up having a 6-6 year, nobody's going to think, oh, your defensive backfield's really good, right? So like, a lot of it's relative, but I do think that we have 2 or 3 guys, Keontae Scott being one of them in that star position, DJ James being one of them. And then I believe that there's going to be somebody who's going to emerge from that safety room who could be in that conversation for, all SEC first or second team type of stuff, right? So, I'm a really big fan of what the defensive backfield could be, based upon the talent level I feel like we have and the depth that we have of like, there shouldn't be a huge drop off if somebody is hurt, suspended, inactive for whatever reason there is. We've got enough guys in that room. I think that we could always be serviceable from our defensive backfield.
How's that star position work? Kind of, what are his responsibilities? Him be doing like some blitzes or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a box safety, like in most. So it's a hybrid safety linebacker, right? So playing in the box a lot, coming on blitzes a lot of responsibility about like kind of being an edge contained guy against the run. But then, a nickel cornerback type of guy against tight ends, guarding against drag routes, stuff like that. So it's just this hybrid role that they're going to end up being matched up with guys in the slot, tight ends, and that sort of thing, like a safety would be typically in a 5-man defensive backfield. But they're going to be doing a lot of simulated pressure. So that star might come on a blitz and they'll drop the jack back, and it's still only 4 guys that are rushing, right? So they're going to be doing a lot of things that are going to be contingent upon that jack and that star being so multiple in that defense that offenses don't really know who's coming from where and what position. And they need to be able to do a lot of things. And I think Keontae Scott fits the mold of that, a guy who doesn't mind going there, sticking his nose in there, making a play against the run, but he can be in coverage. He could be opportunistic when they're disguising coverages in certain ways. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to produce from that position.
Yeah, I noticed in y'all's interview, he just seemed, and he kind of mentioned it. He mentioned just one of the things that kind of made me chuckle was he said it was so new to him coming from where he came from that he didn't even understand some of the lingo, some of the slang that was being said. He's like, I don't even know what those guys are saying. So I think that'd be a big part of it too, man. It's just being more comfortable in this, in his second year at Auburn, and that sounds pretty interesting, dude. It'll be fun to see just kind of where they use him and matching him up, and it sounds like a big responsibility. So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a focal point of the defense, how that star aligns, and you get a lot of keys from what they're doing, what is going to be happening on the defensive side. So again, it takes a special kind of player to really want to play that role. He showed me some tape of some of the guys that he was looking at to kind of that have played in that Ron Roberts defense before, and I was like, hey man, if you're gonna be this guy, it's gonna be scary out there.
Blake, you got anything, brother?
I just wanted to ask you about Jair Shorter and Shane Hooks, man, and just bringing those 2 guys in. What is it going to mean to this Auburn offense? And could Auburn get their first 1,000-yard wide receiver this year?
First in a very long time. Ronnie Daniels is the last guy that did it. We've gotten close a couple of times since then, but I don't know. I think that they've got to figure out kind of what that run pass balance is going to be. If the run game is as good as we hope it's going to be, because we've got enough talent in that room to be really good, 1 through really 5 in that running back room, I think are guys who could start for most major programs around the country. And I am including Sean Jackson in that, right? Like I don't know that he's necessarily a Power 5 starter everywhere, but he could make the 3 deep in most Power 5 schools because I think he's that talented. And he's like our 4th or 5th guy, right? So that room is really good. And if that is going to be good and Peyton Thorne is going to be the quarterback, and I specifically say Peyton Thorne because I've seen what he can do in a run-heavy offense where you've got to guard against a dynamic running attack. Him in play action is deadly, right? Like he can put up 3,000 to 4,000 yards. And if you're going to have the quarterback throw for over 3,000 yards, it would make me feel like one of those guys in that wide receiver room who's going to be the prime target could get over 1,000 yards in that scenario. And that's really been the biggest thing for Auburn. It's like when we've thrown the ball enough to have guys be in that range, our completion percentage was so anemic that it didn't really matter, right? If you're going to throw the ball 40 times a game, but you're only going to complete 50% of those, it doesn't really matter that you're throwing it 40 times in the game. But if you're going to throw it 35 times in the game and you're telling me that guy's going to complete 25 plus of those, oh yeah, we're going to have a conversation about somebody being 1,000-yard receiver then.
Well, Ike, bringing in these big time wide receivers, big, physical, and I always say that we know that's what Coach Hugh Freeze loves is those 6'4", 6'5" guys. We see them all in the NFL that he produced out of Liberty and Ole Miss. Do you think bringing in guys like this out of the portal has any impact on a guy like a Perry Thompson or even a Ryan Williams down here in Saraland, Alabama? Just to see those guys and Hugh make an attempt to spread the ball around, throw the ball down the field, and Alabama kind of it's looking like, they went Buckner and Tommy Reese with the Notre Dame offense are going to have those wide receivers now. Could Hugh have an impact on those recruits?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you've got to put a product on the field that shows them this is how I would see you, right? Like, so if you put Jair Shorter or Hooks out there on the field, they can see themselves in the prototype of that guy, right? Like you only had, they, this, I always hesitate when I start to say this because it feels like I'm crapping on the kid. They wanted to do that with Nick Martin, and maybe he still gets an opportunity to do it. I just don't know that it materialized in the way that they thought it would during the spring. And so they wanted to bring some other guys in to compete. And what you're going to have in Camden Brown out there as a big body receiver, but they need 2, 3, now 4 of those guys out there on the field who can produce, again, for depth's sake, to make sure if we lose one of our big receivers, we don't have to change the dynamic of what we do, because I need to put a product on the field that looks similar to what I'm telling these young men as recruits. Hey, listen, man, I know you thought that this was just a thing that I was doing from back in the day. Hey, I got an updated version of this to show you right here on film. This could be you next year. So it's super important to be able to put that picture out there, and guys understand that it's not just theory. Like, we're actually able to produce this on the field. Now, picture yourself out there doing this very thing.
Yeah,
we're gonna get Perry Thompson, fellas.
I hope. Ike, I know Dustin wants to talk a little bit about some team chemistry. I know he had a question for you about that, and Dustin, I was kind of interested in myself also. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, man, because we talked to Mike G about it a couple weeks ago, and I know me and you've kind of messaged back and forth about it. I think it was after the TJ Finley interview. I just said, hey, man, I just don't like him not knowing some of those guys on the offensive line. Ultimately, he ended up transferring. But something you kind of said after you stuck out to me was, you said, man, there's just a lot of new guys, and I don't know if they're coming together right now. And I've really been thinking on it. And get your take on this. I think, Ike, there's only so much coming together, and Blake, I want your take as well. I think there's only so much coming together that they can do until you're in the fire. And what I mean by that is, you do everything right, you wax, you mask, cool beans. But then you go out to Cal, and maybe it's 17-17 in the second half, and maybe you guys have to come together in that moment, facing a little adversity, and maybe then you kind of look around at one another and say, okay, but it's going to have to be something like that. And also, for our snake bit of program that we have right now, just haven't won anything big in a while, we're going to have to kind of get over that hump in a big game. There's going to be a big moment where we've got to make that play that we haven't made in 5-6 years, and we're just going to have to do it, because until you do it, it's that, oh shit, here we go again type feeling. Yeah. So just kind of like, what do you think? Do you agree with that? It's going to be just, there's only so much you can do until you get there. And how much is that a concern of yours now that we're kind of, the team is now together and here we go into the summer?
Yeah, I think a lot of the chemistry that you have with camaraderie amongst guys is built during the summer, honestly, because that's the part where it becomes more voluntary and not coach driven. And a lot of what you get from chemistry, like coaches don't necessarily drive the culture. They set the culture, right? Like, they determine this is what our parameters are going to be around the culture. And you can, if I'm gonna go on this deep dive analogy, like you can set the environment up of, this is the soil that we're going to do, and this is how I'm going to plant my stuff within this yard that I have. In order for that growth to happen, like, you can't really make that. Like, there's got to be some organic things that happen to actually make that growth happen. Like, again, you can prune stuff and you can get guys out of the way that are helping to stifle it, but either it's going to happen or it's not, right? Like, I have a backyard right now, and I'm really going way far down this path, and I apologize, but my backyard right now is the community that we're built in. They brought the dirt in to our subdivision, right? Like, it wasn't actual soil that grows anything. So it's really hard to cultivate true, like, grass growth in here. So I have to do way more stuff to it. And bringing that back into the football team's fold, like, I think that there are things that environment wise you can do to help facilitate that. But a portion of that is really just got to be the kids going in there and doing the work. Right. And so hopefully over the summer, and just from reports that I'm already getting from some of them, they're actually starting to do a lot of that work right now. because they just really got back on campus and they're starting the summer workout program. But a lot of that is going to happen right now during the summer. But to your point, it can look really good until the first something hits it. And then you're like, okay, yeah, that wasn't as nice as we thought it was going to be. It looks nice. You can take a picture of it and look good for the picture, but let's try it by something and see what it's going to happen. Right. And how well did I really build this? That's going to come in the fire of those moments during the season for sure.
Ike, I wanted to ask you real quick, man. How much is this quarterback battle going to drive both of these guys, Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford, and whoever wins this battle? Are the guys going to buy in 100% to one or the other, or is the guy who loses the battle, is he going to buy in to helping the guy who wins it prepare each weekend? And how is that going to work out in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's yet to be seen, right? I think that the players are going to buy into whoever wins that battle if it's a true competition, right? Like, I don't think that there's any way that a true competition could exist between the young men that are in that quarterback room and someone come out of that as the champion of that competition, and you don't get the players to say, oh, they earned that, right? Because in my opinion, Peyton Thorne is a guy who's ready to start right now, right? Based upon what we've already seen him do on the field, he's ready to start right now. So if Robbie Ashford or Holden Geriner come in and win that job, they are prepared to play. There's no way you usurp a guy who has had that many starts and has played serviceably. I mean, he's not a Heisman candidate by any means, but serviceably at a Power 5 level like Peyton Thorne. If you're going to usurp that guy and win that competition, you earned that. And it shouldn't even be a debate that whoever wins that competition deserves it, because you know that you have somebody who can go out and start right now in that room.
Love to hear that. Dustin, I know you had something. About a draft. You had a draft question, or so I know it was one of them
No,
things.
yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I got lagged bad right there. I got really behind. I didn't hear anything I said for the last 3 minutes. So
You're good.
But I wanted to have like a fun question, and this comes up because I miss the shit out of football. So I'm at the point now where I'm watching old games, and I was watching 06 Florida the other day. And first off, one of the best Auburn crowds you're ever going to see. That place was bananas that night. And it was fun to see Urban Meyer kind of stand over there befuddled. But it got me thinking, man. So here's the question. You can't use anybody that got drafted in the first round of that 05 draft. No JC, no Ronnie, no Caddy, no Carlos. Your favorite player from the Tuberville era. And I'll just give mine real quick. It's Quentin Groves. Because I love a pass rusher that'll get after the QB. Quentin Groves was my guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not go with Quentin Groves from that team, just because he was such a different, like, there are very few guys who just every time they step on the field, you expect them to go make a play. So you talked about this a minute ago about like we've just kind of been snake bitten about not being able to just go make that play. Yep. Q was one of those dudes who just made that play consistently, bro. Like, he was just going to come up in big moments and he was going to get the big sack, or he was going to get the big tackle, or he was going to pass break. Like, you had to account for him in big moments because he was determined to make that kind of, you don't just get the mold of Quentin Groves just walking on everybody's campus all the time. So it's hard to not go with him in that situation. I'm a big believer that if you have a guy like that, where like the gravity of the defense tilts in that direction, your defense just is infinitely better, right? And if it's a guy who is a pass rusher, especially in this league where they're tossing it around so much, man, like if we have a Quentin Groves that emerges on this defense, I'm gonna be the worst homer in the world about. Let me see somebody coming off of that edge. The kid from App State, the McLeod kid, right? Mm-hmm. Let me see him go out there and do what he did against Texas A&M, like the first couple of games of the season. and I'm gonna be insufferable because I'm gonna be like, oh y'all, we're gonna beat everybody. I don't care who you're gonna beat everybody because it makes playing defense so much better when you know 3rd and 6 or more, they got to get the ball out of their hands because that dude's coming, man. Or you got to double team him, and now whoever you've got lined up in the middle is soloed, and they're gonna go in there and eat. So you get that guy playing at that level consistently, defense it's gonna be special. But
Hey,
we haven't really had that guy, right? Like as much as I love Derek Hall, he wasn't that, right? Like as much as I love Kobe Wooden, he wasn't that. Like they would show up every now and then in those moments, but I'm talking about flashing on your screen every single game, 3rd and long. That guy is being a menace. Let us get a Quentin Groves. SEC teams are going to hate to see us coming up on their schedule for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Ike, let me ask you one more real quick before we let you get out of here. I got to know about my dude, Jalen Simpson, man. Is this his year to finally, I know late last year he made the transition to safety, but is this his year to really break out in that spot for the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys who I mentioned, like in the safety room. Like I like Donovan Kaufman back there, and Jalen Simpson's the other guy I think that can be special in that safety room, who could be, maybe a first, second team All SEC type of performer, because he doesn't miss tackles a lot, right? Like he takes good angles, and when he gets there, he gets the guy to the ground. He's got more speed than people give him credit for. I talk to guys on that team who talk about how fast Jalen Simpson actually is. He has more speed and he's got good ball skills, man. Like he's come up with some timely interceptions for this defense over the last few years. Jalen Simpson could be, as he kind of blossoms into that safety, because again, safety isn't the position that he normally plays. He's usually playing an outside or slot corner, right? So you move him back there, let him patrol the backfield with the speed that he has, with the ball skills that he has, and his ability to tackle in space. Yeah, Jalen Simpson could absolutely have a monstrous year being in that role from the very beginning of the season, and a guy that they trust to do that. Could be a really big year for Jalen Simpson. So a lot of high expectations from me for that young man coming into this season.
Well, Ike, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. I know before we get out of here, I want you to plug your show, and I just want to thank you for helping myself and Dustin out and just coming on to talk Auburn athletics, baseball, football, basketball, softball, whatever it is, man. We really appreciate you guys over at the War Rapport.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys for having me on here, having the conversation, man. I love talking about Auburn sports. So more opportunities I get to do that, the better my day is. But yeah, we're the War Rapport on everything, man. So check us out on all the social media platforms. You can follow me at TWR Ike Jones on Twitter. And yeah, let's talk more sports, and let's go out here and have some more things that we can make people mad at us about because we're bragging too much.
Love it, Ike, man. We will definitely get you back on. It's always a blast to have you on here. And with that being said, we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to leave you with a War Damn Eagle, and we will catch you on the next one. We're out.